In this video, I'm going to deliberate upon Gottlob Frege's paper on sense and reference. This paper has a seminal impact on linguistic philosophers after him. Frege made a significant contribution in the field of philosophy of mathematics, philosophy of logic, and philosophy of language. He is considered as one of the pioneers of analytic philosophy, and his paper underlies the theory of meaning. Theory of meaning has been one of the intriguing topics in philosophy of language and linguistics. So the traditional theory of meaning was a referential theory. How does a string or some noises, how do some noises or marks become meaningful, or how can we produce meaningful utterances, or we grasp the meaning of certain noises or marks effortlessly? What is it for some mark or noise to be meaningful? What makes them meaningful, distinctively meaningful? So these are some pertinent questions that are usually discussed in the domain of philosophy of language and in linguistics. So the first and the most initially attractive theory was referential theory of meaning, and that a meaningfulness of word depends upon its reference. So the meaning of a word is what it stands for. It's as simple as that. It's so appealing initially, but it is not adequate, because several objection has been posed against referential theory of meaning to reveal its inadequacy. So now so some of the objection that we can mention now that there are several parts of speech that do not actually refer to anything in the world, since the referential theory of meaning based on the assumption that meaning of a word is the object in the world denoted by the word. So meaning of a word is what it stands for, what it refers to, what it designates, what it represents. But as we mentioned, that there are varieties of parts of speech that do not actually refer to anything in the world. For example, noun such as dint, D-I-N-T, dint, sake, S-A-K, sake. When you say that duties for duty's sake, the word sake, by dint of, the word dint, they're all nouns, but they do not actually refer to anything in the world to be meaningful, but they are still meaningful. What it is for them to be meaningful, this is a question, and referential theory of meaning is inadequate to answer or to explain the meaningfulness of these words. And there are lots of words which do not have reference in the outside world. Some of them are of, from, yes, alas. So, and also proper name have empty proper names like Pegasus, and yeah. So the empty proper name do not refer to anything, but still occurring in a sentence become meaningful. And according to the referential theory of meaning, the sentence is just a series of names that serves to pick out individual object from the world. But in this theory, if we follow this theory, actually we cannot make any grammatical, we cannot form any grammatical statement, because it will be simply a series of proper names that serve to pick out individuals from the world. But in our language, statements are not exactly like that. We cannot have any reference for is, the copula is, do not have any reference in the world. So it's very complicated and cannot be captured by referential theory of meaning. Yeah, referential theory of meaning is one way of looking at language, and yeah, some words do stands for objects in the world, but it's so limited that it cannot account for the meaningfulness of entire linguistic system. So now Gottlob Frege, in his paper on sense and reference, his main objective was to establish that there is something more to meaning than reference. And in order to establish that, he posed 3 arguments in favor of it. And these arguments goes as, the first one is Frege's puzzle about informative identity statement having co-referential term. This is the first puzzle. And the second puzzle is puzzle about substitutivity principle. And another argument that serves to establish the distinction between sense and reference is understanding sense without knowing reference. So let's begin with the first argument. Number 1, Frege's puzzle. So Frege, in order to account for the informativeness of identity statement having co-referential term, he proposes the distinction between sense and reference. He was actually intrigued by identity statements in the having 2 types of forms. So 2 types of identity statements, like A equal to A and A equal to B. So what is identity? Identity statement expresses that an object is related to itself. Reflexive relation, as simple as that. So Priya, a girl's name, Priya is Priya. The girl Priya is the girl Priya. So it is a simply expressing that an individual or a thing stands to itself, only stands to itself. So now the identity statement A equal to B is of this type. It is trivial, it is very simple, trivial. It does not add any new information to it. It's non-informative. So now this is a priori. We need not to observe anything in the outside world to acquire this knowledge that A equal to A. Yeah, simply A equal to A. It is a priori. It is known a priori. It is analytic in Kant's terminology. And it is trivial because it conveys no new information. But another type of identity statement of the form A is equal to B. To exemplify this sort of identity statement, Frege mentions the famous example: the morning star is the evening star. Frege asserts that the later sort of identity statement differ in cognitive value from the former. The morning star is the evening star. Definitely differs from the identity statement the morning star is morning star. The morning star is trivial, non-informative, whereas the morning star is the evening star is informative because it is a consequence of astronomical discovery. We have come to know this piece of information after discovery, astronomical discovery. Before that, it was unknown to us. The morning star refers to the planet that is visible in the eastern sky before sunrise, and the evening star refers to the planet that is visible in the western sky after sunset. So before this discovery, it was unknown to people. So they used to think that the morning star is different from evening star. But after the discovery, people came to the consensus that no, the morning star is the morning star. So it is definitely conveying new information. It's not trivial statement like the statement A equal to A. So now how do we account for these informative identity statement having co-referential terms, because these two refer to one and the same planet, that is Venus. Now Frege asks a question related to informative identity statements. Is it a relation? He's asking, is it a relation at the outset of his paper? Is it a relation between objects, or is it a relation between names or signs of objects? So is it a relation? And he is actually later on rejected both these alternative answers. It is neither a relation between objects nor relation between names or signs of objects. He has also proposed few grounds to reject these alternatives. First, it is not a relation between objects. If we assume that the morning star is the evening star, this identity statement conveys a relation between objects referred to by each of the expression, then it would be simply like trivial identity statement, A equal to A. Then it would not convey any information. But in reality, we are getting information from the identity statement, the morning star is the evening star. Or take another example, because it is seeming stereotypical example. The greatest student of Plato is the teacher of Alexander the Great. I hope you are getting the greatest student of Plato refers to Aristotle, person Aristotle, is the teacher of the Alexander of Great. These two expressions refer to one and the same individual, that is Aristotle. Now, definitely this is informative that he happens to be a student of Plato, he happens to be the teacher of Alexander the Great. So definitely it is conveying new information, right? So it is not of the form of trivial identity statements. Now Frege is rejecting the first alternative. No, this is not a relation between objects, like this refers to this object and this refers to this object. These two expressions refers to the one and the same individual, and it is the relationship between the object with itself. It is not as simple as that, otherwise it would become as simple as trivial identity statements. So he is rejecting the first alternative, and now he is rejecting the second alternative as well, on the basis of some reasons. The second alternative was a relation. It is a relation between names or signs of the objects. Names or signs of objects. Is it so? See, the student of Plato, according to this alternative, if we assume this alternative to be the true, then the student of Plato is a name or sign for Aristotle, and the student and the teacher of Aristotle is another sign for the person Aristotle. Okay, so Aristotle has two names: the student of Plato, the teacher of Alexander. Just imagine this, and in the identity statement, these two names are related to each other. Is this so? No, because it is not merely the relation between arbitrary names of a single individual or an object. Not that two arbitrary names are somehow related in the identity statement. It's not arbitrary names that are being related in the identity statement in the informative type of identity statement, like the teacher of Alexander the Great is the student of Plato. It's not like that, because it is very informative. It conveys information. So he is rejecting both alternatives. Now he is proceeding to establish his distinction between sense and reference. Sense is the mode of presentation and it fixes the reference. Actually, it has been observed by Frege, another analytic philosopher, that Kant's theory of sense assumes two aspects. One is sense is the semantic content of a proper name, and sense has another function, that is to fix the reference, to denote the reference, to give the reference that gives us the reference. So basically, sense is the mode of presentation, the thought the proposition expresses, and the reference is the object denoted by the expression. So reference is the object that is denoted by or referred to by an expression. Now the second argument is that we can grasp the sense of an expression or a sentence without knowing its reference. Yeah, we can provide few examples, like the celestial body. Kant is using that example in his paper. The celestial body most distant from earth. This definitely, the meaning of the expression can be grasped effortlessly, but we have doubt whether there is any reference to that expression. We are not assured of the referent of the expression, but we can effortlessly, instantly grasp the meaning as soon as the expression is uttered. So this sort of utterance can enable us to grasp the meaning, but it does not assure us of its reference. Now another sort of sentence, like Pegasus is flying across the sky. This again is definitely understandable, its sense is understandable, but Pegasus is, since it is a fictitious entity, does not have any reference. So grasping sense does not assure us of its reference. That is why there must be something more to meaning than reference. So he is just rejecting the referential theory of meaning. That is why we at the outset introduce referential theory of meaning, in order to prepare us to understand that why is Frege distinguishing between sense and reference. Now the third argument is regarding substitutivity puzzle. Substitutivity is a principle, logical principle. It's also known as salva verite, and this has been coined by rationalist philosopher Leibniz, basically attributed to Leibniz, that if two co-referential terms, if they refer to one and the same individual, one can be substituted for the other without changing the truth value. So this what is called the substitutivity principle. Now there are certain statements which reveal that referential theory of meaning cannot actually explain the connection between those sentences and the world. And chief of them are sentences which is propositional attitude ascriptions, which is called in linguistic and language philosophy of language propositional attitude ascriptions. Actually, in linguistic, propositional attitude ascriptions are those contexts, linguistic contexts, in which speaker expresses his or her attitude towards a certain proposition. That is why in linguistic, this linguistic environment is known as propositional attitude ascriptions. and these includes attitudes like belief, fear, desire, thinking, assumption, and like that. Okay. So they just the content of the belief, content of the attitude, be it belief, assumption. So the content of the attitude is expressed following a subordinate clause, a clause that is introduced by the verbs of propositional attitude. Verbs like believes, thinks, believe, think, assume, okay, like that. So consider the example. John believes that the student of Plato is a philosopher. John, the person John, actually believes that the student of Plato is a philosopher. Now, for applying the principle called salva veritate or the substitutivity principle, if we interchange the expression the student of Plato, substitute it, and we substitute it for the teacher of the Alexander of Great, would the truth value remain the same? No. John believes that the student of Plato is a philosopher, but he may not be aware of that he happens to be the teacher of Alexander. So when in the context of propositional attitude ascriptions, substitutivity principle has counter example. It may lead to change of truth value. So now, in order to save substitutivity principle or salva veritate, Frege is proposing the distinction between sense and reference. That means I hope that you got the reason why Frege is proposing the sense, the distinction between sense and reference. Actually, these contexts, the contexts relating to the propositional attitude ascription is known as opaque contexts. Opaque contexts, there is a reason to call these opaque, that I will clarify it after clarifying the example. So John believes that the student of Plato is a philosopher. Now he may not, this is true. Student of Plato is a philosopher, Aristotle. Student of Plato refers to the person Aristotle. In fact, he was a philosopher. It is true. The truth value is definitely true. Now, if we substitute the expression for the teacher of the Alexander of Great is a philosopher, it will turn out to be false, because this substitutivity is being done in the context of propositional attitude ascriptions, because here John is expressing his attitude or mental state towards the proposition, his belief. He is expressing his belief, because he may not also believe that the teacher of Alexander the Great was a philosopher. Completely he may ignore or ignorant of this piece of knowledge. So belief, John believes, John knows, John assumes, belief, assume, things, these are all propositional attitude, verb of propositional attitude, and it's just expression of speaker's attitude towards a certain proposition. And in the case of these linguistic context, substitution principle does not work. So it is definitely a violation of the principle. Now, violation of a principle is dangerous. Now, in order to save the substitutivity principle or salva veritate, now Frege is introducing the distinction between ordinary reference and indirect reference. Okay, ordinary reference means simply reference, that ordinarily what we call by reference, what we understand by reference. The student of Plato, its reference ordinarily is Aristotle. Now, indirect reference is different. Indirect reference is the ordinary sense. Sense is the mode of presentation. So when John is expressing his belief that the student of Plato is a philosopher, the reference here need to be understood in terms of indirect reference or ordinary sense. Ordinary sense or customary sense. Customarily, what we understand by sense has to be applied as a reference in these opaque contexts. So we cannot substitute it with another expression having the same reference. Although the two expressions we have mentioned now, that the student of Plato, the teacher of the Alexander the Great, they refer to one and the same individual, still there is change of truth value. Why change of truth value? Because the reference is different. In the case of former propositional attitude ascription, that John believes the student of Plato is a philosopher, the reference is just the sense, not the reference Aristotle. The sense, the mode of presentation is the reference. That is called indirect reference. So by introducing the distinction between customary reference and indirect reference, Frege is able to save the principle called salva veritate, and the entire project is meant for the introducing the distinction between sense and reference. And finally, he was, through all these arguments, he was able to solve the puzzle of identity and substitutivity puzzle, because according to him there is something more to meaning than reference, and he rejected the referential theory of meaning.